This is the new Hasbro Marvel Legends Renew Your Vows Spider-Man. This is considered by many people to be the best Spider-Man that we have gotten so far in the 6-inch Marvel Legends line. And I am inclined to agree. However, even though I did do a review on this, I really wanted to show and demonstrate how we got to this point. Because an action figure like this doesn't happen overnight. There is a 20-plus year history of 6-inch Marvel action figures that has gotten us to this, objectively best Spider-Man that Hasbro has ever given us. This figure is phenomenal. It poses great. It looks amazing. It is by far the best so far. It uses so much technology that has been developed throughout the years and so many innovations that I can very confidently say that this is the best. However, this was not the first. There have been many Spider-Mans. Now, this is a bit of an evolution video. However, this definitely is standing on the shoulder of the giant that was Glenn Webb. Glenn Webb did a Spider-Man action figure evolution, and all of his videos are absolutely amazing. Please go down into the description. I've linked to Glenn Webb. He was a true Marvel legend. Unfortunately, he was taken from us far too soon a few years ago, and I wanted to make this video as a tribute to Glenn Webb and his legacy and everything. And while I don't have every single 6-inch Spider-Man that has ever been produced, Glenn Webb's evolutions were far more comprehensive. I did want to do this as kind of an honor to him, to kind of show how things have progressed since his passing. And I can really confidently say that Glenn Webb would have absolutely loved this Spider-Man. It's really emotional for me talking about Glenn Webb, because he was one of my favorite content creators, and losing him was very tragic and definitely personally affected me. However, I want to honor his legacy today by talking about a further evolution of Spider-Man action figures. So it had to start somewhere, right? This is where it started. This is the Spider-Man Classics Spider-Man from the very first wave of, Spider-Man Classics. This predates Marvel Legends, but this figure and others like it in the Spider-Man Classics line are what gave us Marvel Legends. You can see it has a lot of the modern articulation that we're kind of used to even seeing nowadays. Double knees, double elbows. He's got hips that move out. He's got an ab crunch. However, the technology of his assembly was very different. I almost feel like there's rubber bands maybe inside him. I don't know. He's always felt very springy to me with his torso articulation. I don't know if that's just me, but it's a very odd design. He also has a very interesting anatomy to him. He has a very bulbous neck. And another thing, he doesn't even have bicep swivels. Because the reason why he is pinless, which yes, the very first 6-inch Spider-Man was pinless. The reason why is because his thighs and his biceps were two halves that were sonic welded together. You can see the very large gate marks on the front of his thigh there. I kind of wish that would have been on his back thigh, but yeah, it's cool that he's pinless, but the technology was definitely something that was not continued in the 6-inch action figures for some time. He still has really nice articulation, though, nonetheless. And for being over 20 years old, like this Spider-Man, even though, say, trying to get it in a similar pose to what I have going on with the Renew Your Vows Spidey, even though it's not nearly as dynamic and it's not nearly as high quality, it doesn't feel nearly as great as this, it's still no slouch. I wouldn't say this is a bad action figure. I mean, it's the first one. Without this, what would we have? However, Toy Biz did progress the Spider-Man action figure, and this is one that has some more modern engineering. Say, for instance, it does have the bicep swivels, and it now has pins for the elbows. However, Toy Biz still liked retaining gimmicks. This is a remold of a Spider-Man that had light-up eyes, so unfortunately, he only has a swivel at the head. However, I really do like this Spider-Man. He's got a really nice ab crunch. He just looks really cool. I love how dynamic he is, despite his head being kind of limited. Speaking of the head, though, I always love how different each Spider-Man mask is. I love the differences of the eye shapes and the head shapes. I really do enjoy it. And this is probably one of my favorite interpretations of the Spider-Man mask as an action figure. Yeah, you can see one thing that this one kind of contributes is that Toy Biz was starting to get the engineering across that we would, learn and get to see with almost every action figure for years and years until we've started to get the pinless ones. However, Toy Biz did have some oddities with the engineering. Take this Urban Legends Spider-Man, for instance. This was one of my childhood Spider-Man figures, as well as the Spider-Man Classics. I had him as a kid, too. This one, I have a soft spot for it because it was a childhood figure, and it was actually one of my favorite Spider-Man figures because I loved the printed-on webs and the glossiness of him. However, proportionally, he's got these big old shoulders. He's got shoulder pads, and he's got a very odd look to him because of that. He does have really nice articulation, though. He still retains a lot of what we would come to know and expect. However, the ankles are kind of loose because those are pinned in. He does have a little bit of an ankle rocker, but he does have toe articulation. The other two Spider-Man did too, but toe articulation was something that Toy Biz often had. He also has finger articulation, something that Hasbro doesn't really do nowadays, but Toy Biz and Toy Biz designers definitely did enjoy. Yeah, the shoulder articulation was effective, but definitely looked kind of odd. But this one actually does have butterflies, which is a piece of articulation that we'll see as we move along, and one that is also included in our Renew Your Vows Spider-Man. I really do love this one. He definitely has a soft spot for me. But one thing, too, there is actually a bit of an error on mine. It actually has like a double print on the web. However, I really love it. It's definitely not the best Spider-Man here, but it's one of my favorites. However, Toy Biz was very well known for having very good movie action figures. Their Lord of the Rings line was excellent, as well as their Spider-Man line. And this Toy Biz magnetic Spider-Man was no exception. You can see this figure is just sculpted to the teeth. He has so much intricate detailing. He has such a nice likeness to the Sam Raimi Spider-Man suit. It's just so fun to pose. However, it still uses the disc hinges at the hips there, and it's not nearly as posable because of that. However, no, he just broke on camera! No! That's unfortunate. And nothing a little bit of glue will fix, but yeah, his neck has slightly shattered. That's unfortunate. Like I said, should be an easy fix, but yeah, let's not touch him much more. He's very nice. Still has a lot of the same engineering that Toy Biz had. It's a good one. I'll just have to get some super glue with him. However, my favorite Toy Biz Spider-Man, and still one of my favorite Spider-Man action figures, if not still my favorite, is the McFarlane Spider-Man. This one I feel like has a lot of innovations when it comes to the sculpt and the proportion. Some people don't like the leanness of it, but I feel like Toy Biz was really good with capturing a realistic musculature. And with this, I feel like it really captures a nice, realistic comic book appearance of Spider-Man. I still feel like this is one of the most posable Spider-Man figures ever made. I still think it's really nice. And it really has a lot of nice detail. The sculpting's really great. Again, I love the look of the mask. I think this is a really nice one. However, I feel like with this and with the Tobey Maguire, you can kind of see that Toy Biz reached a point where they kind of stagnated. There wasn't much innovation past this point. You know, we've got shoulder butterflies. However, we still have ball joints, or ball hinges, I should say, at the hips. And it's not perfect. They still had the pins. But I do have to say, this is definitely one of my favorite Spider-Mans, and I'm pretty biased in saying that. When Hasbro stepped up to the plate, they definitely were no slouch. One of the first Spider-Mans released from Hasbro Marvel Legends was the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Spider-Man. They also did one for the Amazing Spider-Man 1, and I think they did maybe one or two before then. But this is my first Hasbro Spider-Man. And I do have to say, it is very nice. It does have a nice innovation of having ball joints at the legs now. You can see, though, it has a very large cavity that allows it to move forward. However, it is a pretty ugly looking joint, and you can see the hips are jutting further than the body. However, I really do like it. The sculpt, again, is very nice. I feel like it's very well done. And I think Hasbro, they definitely knew what they were doing, but as we're going to see, I feel like they kind of started to stop innovating after a while. Spider-Man. He was the Spider-Man to get when he came out. And look at it, you can see why. Again, similar to that Urban Legends Spider-Man, he has a very nice print to him. All of the webs are printed on, he doesn't have any sculpt. However, that does lend itself to a very comic book accurate appearance. It does, of course, come with a pizza. That's why he's called Pizza Spider-Man. He also came with an alternate mask with his mouth showing, so you could actually have him eat it. But the thing that people really loved about this was the slenderness. It integrated those nice ball joints at the hips, even though they couldn't move out super far. And one really good thing about him was that he really innovated the butterfly joints. They were very useful on this figure. However, you can see Hasbro was starting to have an issue with the pins. The red pins on the inside of the arms were pretty ugly, and it took Hasbro quite a while to kind of determine a way to eradicate the pins from the figures. However, this is a really good Spidey. If this is your only Spider-Man, I still think it's a very viable option. But I do feel like this new one really takes the cake. Interestingly, I'm pretty sure this has the same head sculpt as the Renew Your Vows Spider-Man. It's just more like pinched in around the jawline. Hasbro continued to still make good action figures, but they kind of stopped innovating. You can see both of these, this one is the Ultimate Spider-Man and this one is the Civil War Spider-Man. They both have the same kind of stylings to the engineering, you know, they both have the ball joints at the hips. This one doesn't have the butterfly because it's on a smaller body. However, this one has the butterfly, they've got the double joints, they've got the ab click and the rotation, ab click and rotation. This one's very clicky though. Ugh, that is not a good sound. However, yeah, they still made good action figures, but they still had the pins. This one doesn't have red on the outside of the arm, so there's no red shown on the inside. However, that one is, again, a pretty big victim of that. That looks so ugly. I know the pins don't bother everybody, but that I'm definitely one of the collectors that it bothered. So yeah, Hasbro was continuing to make good stuff. They just didn't do much to make it better. But finally, very recently, they have introduced pinless technology. For instance, this is the No Way Home Integrated Suit Spider-Man. This is one of my first Marvel Legends that has no pins. Not only do the pinless joints look a lot better, but they also feel a lot better. The motion's a lot more fluid, and you're just left with a nicer action figure. Some of the articulation is still very similar, you know, butterflies, the clicky body and the rotation. However, this one does have a dumbbell joint at the neck, which allows for a lot more natural articulation and gets rid of the big hinge that was in the necks of many action figures. I do have to say this No Way Home one was pretty impressive. And I mean, you can... yeah, that's why I got it. I needed him to go with those. So looking at all these different Spider-Man action figures, we need to bring this one in and see how it integrates all of these technologies and all of these innovations to bring us to where we are today. So this Renew Your Vows Spider-Man, where to begin? So it has a new torso articulation scheme that Hasbro kind of came up with a few years ago, where it has a crunch at the stomach and has an abdomen joint where you can actually tilt it side to side. So the torso articulation is phenomenal on this figure. He still has the butterflies like many Spider-Man figures had. However, you can see with the pinless joints, look at how smooth that looks on the inside and the outside. It looks really good. One of the only color mismatches is the red on the bottom of the armpit. That's kind of unavoidable. I mean, they did a good job actually hiding the hinge on the top of the arm as well. Something that they did have sometimes, but some figures you could just see a big old hinge right there. He also does have the dumbbell, like we saw on the integrated suit. He also has a cutout in the neck right there, which isn't super obvious. I think it does kind of match since it is sort of lined up with the web lines. However, it does allow it to go back pretty far. It can still go down pretty far as well, and you get some tilt. One thing I really love, this is an articulation scheme not taken from any of these figures, but actually many import action figures. Drop down legs. So they saw the legs on, say, like the Amazing Spider-Man 2 Spidey, where, yeah, they're further down, they're more separated, and allowed for a lot better articulation. So you can see right here, further down separated, you can get the legs moving all the way up, you can get them moving all the way out. However, you can shift them up now. You can actually close that gap and make the body look way better. However, one thing that I feel like is a big innovation on this figure, not only does it continue to have the pinless joints, but it has pinless toe articulation. How they've engineered these toes now These toes are so durable, they can actually hold up the weight of the action figure. And with the more modern version of the hinge and ankle pivot on Marvel Legends figures, you can seriously get this guy posed in action poses with one foot on his toes. Here, let me do it right now for you. So let me get this leg positioned where he's going to be standing on that toe. And I can get his leg all the way out and all the way spread that far. I can also get him in a nice three-point stance, and with that cut in the neck, I can still have his head facing up. So the articulation is phenomenal, but let's avoid the three-point stance. I want to show you how he can actually support his weight on his toe. And it's pretty effortless too. Of course, there's always balancing that's involved with getting a figure in a pose this complicated. However, there you go. That didn't take too long. I even nudged it a little bit and it was able to recover. This is, on paper, the best Spider-Man action figure produced and released domestically. Yes, there's imports, but they cost close to $100. For this figure being under 30 bucks, it is simply the best. Alrighty guys, I think I've pretty much shown the evolution of the 6-inch Spider-Man action figure. It's pretty great. It's pretty stellar how we have come this far and ended up with a Spider-Man this remarkable. Dare I say, this amazing. It's really great. I'm really happy I decided to get it because it is simply one of the best action figures I've bought in a long time. It's so fun to play with. It's truly amazing, and definitely my favorite Hasbro Spider-Man. Even though my personal bias towards the McFarlane one and just how it looks, it's going to be a tough battle for me. However, if I can only keep two Spider-Man figures, it's going to be that one, and it's going to be that one. Alrighty, guys. Thank you so much for watching. And again, special shout out to Glenn Webb. He is truly someone that changed the landscape of the YouTube toy collecting community. His evolution videos are phenomenal. If you want to see a more complete and comprehensive look of this action figure evolution of Spider-Man, unfortunately only up until about 2016 or so, check out his channel. He did awesome evolution videos, not just of Spider-Man, but other figures as well. He also did WWE. He made amazing customs. Glenn Webb was a truly talented person, and I sincerely, deeply miss him. Alrighty guys, there we go. Thank you so much for watching. Special shout out to the patrons of Patreon as well. Thank you all so much for your continued support. Alrighty guys, there we go. Have a good one, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.